upfront, Africa GeoPortal is an evolving community-led platform, and one that we have always listened to the users. It's to be guided by the geospatial community. And so in that regard, it's probably something that may have changed since you last heard or interacted with it. So I'm just going to give a brief intro this morning and then hand over to Pauline to get into the details and show you some of the things that you can do with Africa GeoPortal. But let me just start off with a little bit of background, and apologies if some have seen this before, but as I said, it's always evolving. So I think we know as a geospatial community that tech innovation is booming. Internet penetration is improving. It's still obviously a massive problem, but the connectivity across the continent and therefore the innovation across the continent is frankly leading the way. I mean, there's stuff happening in the region that other people are watching and learning from. So it's fantastic to see in that regard. And Africa GeoPortal in general is an enabler. It's just a set of tools, learning materials, and data that we want geospatial users to come and play with, learn, solve local challenges. If you don't know about geospatial, start from scratch. If you're an expert, then start playing with notebooks and and doing the machine learning, etc. So we really wanted to support the geospatial community as Esri. I imagine most people on the call are familiar with Esri, but obviously we'll come on to a couple of statements from us and how this came around in a minute. I mean, just to start, not that I want people to not listen to me, but it's a simple URL, africageoportal.com. You can create an account. I think Pauline will touch on this. You just Facebook, Google, or email address, and you can create an account, and off you go. There's no financials involved, and there will never be financials involved in Africa GeoPortal. It's not a product from Esri. It's a community-led platform. And just as I said at the beginning there, everyone looking at the progress and innovation in the region, there is now a Caribbean GeoPortal and a Latin America GeoPortal, maybe a South Pacific Islands GeoPortal or Europe GeoPortal, all either live or coming, and that's because of what they saw through the geospatial community in the region. So like I said, people watching the innovation and frankly learning from, which is fantastic to see. So for those that don't know Esri, we're a technology company based out of the US. We've been around for over 50 years now. We're still a family-owned company led by this gentleman, Jack Dangermond, a visionary. Some call him the father of GIS, but just really someone who wanted to create technology to solve the challenges of the world, whether that be in industry or in environment or climate, socioeconomic, etc. And obviously, we won't go into too much of this, but more recently, COVID-19, such a geospatial problem that the world has faced, and geography has been at the core of many countries and organizations' response to it. So I won't read through the quote, but I mean, Jack is foundational to really wanting to discover his users. He makes technology for Esri users. And this is about expanding it to say that there should be no barriers to entry for technology. And he wanted to make Africa GeoPortal freely available in that regard. So really, it's designed as a couple of things, and it's really not prescriptive. We don't say too many things you can't do with Africa GeoPortal. In fact, we challenge you to find different things to do with it that we haven't thought of. So the vision is a one-stop shop, a portal of portals. If you have geographic data, we want to help people find that. If you don't have anywhere to host your geographic data, then you can host it on Africa GeoPortal. If there's other great continental data sets like the Digital Earth Africa stuff that people may have heard of, we want people to be able to find that and also find it with the tools and the learning materials. So they're not downloading an image file, they're playing with the imagery, seeing what they can do, maybe making a dashboard or a map or an app, taking that to their manager or taking that to their community group and saying, hey, we can do something here with this data, these tools, and this learning. It's free for single users, as I mentioned, and it's not restrictive. It can be based in Africa, based internationally. As long as you're working on African geospatial challenges, then you're welcome to use the platform. As I said, all about removing barriers to entry, and it's around being sustainable. Unfortunately, we see too many projects have a beginning and an end, and we really want to move away from the duplication of geospatial data collection that happens across the globe. You really want to move to a point where it's collected once and used many times. So the four main pillars of Africa GeoPortal that you'll see if you've been on the site, as I mentioned, it's a triangle mainly of three main things, and that's tools, data, and learning. And we often see lots of open data sites. There's lots of geospatial tools out there, and there's obviously learning materials. We wanted to try and bring them together. So they were in one place, and you could open data and play with it. maybe bring in some other data. So it could be data you've uploaded that you mash up with data that's in the Living Atlas of Africa. And obviously the fourth pillar is all about sharing success. And therefore we want users to inspire each other. So in Kenya, someone might have been out looking at health facilities and how they've analyzed them based on access to surfaced roads or something. And someone in Ghana says, well, I want to do that. They can just copy, paste, update the data and recreate that success. So it's all about the geospatial community sharing ideas between itself. So within the Africa Living Atlas, just to run through of the sort of three key areas, there's a huge amount of geospatial data. Some of that's provided by Esri, but lots of it is provided by the geospatial users. Some of the bigger organizations like the World Bank has a lot of geospatial data in there. Some of the other projects, like I mentioned, Digital Earth Africa, but also users can upload as long as it's sensible and moderated, upload. I think someone uploaded cycling routes in Kigali in Rwanda. It doesn't matter. That's there for someone then to make maybe a tourist map and so forth. So that's no limitations to type of usage. And you'll see, and I think Pauline will touch on this, that it's Africa GeoPortal, I guess, is the umbrella. But we're really encouraging organizations or countries to have their own curated space within Africa GeoPortal. We call them country geoportals. They're there as a jumpstart. They're free, they're templates, and you can see a number of countries and organizations have set those up. Again, in your own time, you can go and check some of those out. But Senegal, the mapping agency and the statistics agency has worked together to share authoritative data to its geospatial community in Senegal, but obviously everyone else in Africa GeoPortal can access the same information. The broader side of things, the sort of second row of logos there, this is other organizations. So RCMRD, there may well be people on the line from there. They've taken this and created, again, they have a fantastic output of data, but wanted to curate some of this around their member states or make it accessible alongside the tools, but also tell people what they're doing, as I said, around the success stories. So you can see the ecological zones. And Digital Earth Africa, I think many people may have heard of it, but it's effectively free analysis-ready Earth observation data served out of Amazon servers in Cape Town and made available for anyone to use for different purposes. But again, imagery is a very complex topic. So what we want to do is put through Africa GeoPortal simple, user-friendly tools where you can compare vegetation or illegal mining, like I think it was done in Ghana. So again, putting simple tools on top of complex data to make sure that geospatial technology is there for GIS professionals, but also non-GIS professionals as well. As I mentioned, it's all about sustainability from Esri's perspective. This is a community platform led by the community. We have a group of stakeholders across key organizations and countries that help us design and deliver different functionality in Africa GeoPortal. But it's really about saying it will be kept running by Esri as long as it's used and needed. There's no end date to this. We're not turning it off. And hopefully that stops this kind of cycle where you have funded projects, you get funding for 3 years, you go out, do great work. When the funding stops, a lot of the geospatial data goes into USB drives in someone's drawer, and other people don't get to benefit from the data. So we want it to be a sustainable data repository, somewhere people can come and find existing data. So for people like ECOWAS in West Africa, they have their own sort of ECOWAS SDI portal. But we want to help people find that and make use of it. So we signpost people to existing data. And like I said, if you don't have anywhere to host it, then you're free to host the information within Africa GeoPortal. So all about sustainability. And really, it comes down to you. As I said, this is built for the geospatial community and the geospatial users, whether you are new or an expert, young, old, doesn't matter. And so really the pulse of Africa GeoPortal and what we do with it is led by you. People come up with ideas, they contact us, they ask if it's possible. There's not many things we've said no to. In that sense, we want to have the ideas coming from the geospatial community. So I think there's lots of other community events. I'd say keep in touch with us via the usual website, that we have lots of updates and topical pages on there, like Locust last year and COVID-19 obviously ongoing. But follow us on the usual social stuff as well. But most of all, I think it's Africa GeoPortal at esri.com. Any questions, just get in touch and just keep using it. And we challenge you to find new ways of using it. So on that, I'll leave it there. If there are any questions from that, I can't see the chat screen, but I'm sure we'll handle those at the end. And I'd like to hand over to Pauline. Thank you very much.
Matthew. Hi, everyone. I think before I start my section, Victor should be having a poll question.
Yes, I do. And the question is, are you already an Africa GeoPortal user? We saw that 60% already know about the Africa GeoPortal. Now we want to see if we have any users. Let's give it a few more seconds. And we can stop it now. Thank you everyone for sharing, for taking part in the poll. So from the poll, only 19% are users, and we have 81% who are not on the Africa GeoPortal. So Pauline, you can go ahead and show them how they can join the rest on the portal.
Thanks, Victor. So I'll just share my screen for that. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So as Matthew had indicated, the Africa GeoPortal serves many purposes, and one of them is giving that platform to people interested in development across Africa to be able to access spatial data, make use of the data, collaborate with other people, as well as just enable them to continue building their capacity when it comes to accessing and using spatial data. So for you to be able to access Africa GeoPortal, we've made it very easy for you using our URL there, africageoportal.com. And once you get to the platform, you'll be able to see a number of things which I'll walk you through. So as you navigate across the page, you'll see, across the portal, you'll see a number of pages that we have created just to make it easier for people to access content across key different things we have across the continent, or things that are very crucial to us. So this could be something to do with COVID data. And in this case, we have content that has been shared by different people, as well as agencies that have had a number of dashboards or viewers being created. And also we have a lot of contribution from the user communities we have around. Also, just looking at food security across the continent, we have data that we're able to access from FAO, and this has just been filtered or just been made available to specifically across Africa. So at this point, we have different layers on the desert locust crisis over a period of time since 1985, if I'm not wrong. We also have a number of viewers that people can make use of. And finally, we also have a page that is specific to some of the weather data we have from NASA, which could be historical data as well as real-time data that they have made available for users across Africa through Africa GeoPortal. So still on that, we have tried to make available data, tools, and learning resources. When it comes to data, we've worked with a number of organizations to provide this data to you. So that means through our main curated content, that is the Living Atlas of the World, we also have this specified to Africa. And from there, you're able to just filter data or interact with data as you have, or as many of you who are Esri users or Esri technology users, you're able to interact with this data by filtering this information by category, by different tags, and so on. You're able to view this data automatically within a map. And also you can view the item details for the particular data set. So we are trying to make it easier for people to be able to explore data once they've been able to discover it, once they have assessed it and so on, and just for them to easily determine if it's something that will be of use to them. So the other partner that we have, as Matthew had mentioned, we are working with a lot of organizations within Africa and beyond Africa to have content that is specific to our needs. And one of these partners is OpenStreetMap, whereby we have made it possible within OpenStreetMap to be able to just view content that has been contributed by a number of user communities across the continent, and also just to be able to visualize what's been updated and probably be able to easily navigate to the editing interface for OpenStreetMap to be able to access that information. Sorry, my connection seems to be a bit unstable, so I'll just go to the other sections. But as people who are comfortable with OpenStreetMap, if you're in this webinar, you're able to just access this information and easily navigate to the interfaces that you use to update or edit information. Still, within Africa GeoPortal, since we are interested in empowering users with the ability to interact with spatial data, we've made available a number of tools which can help you visualize data, can help you do analysis, and finally share your analysis results with different kinds of users. So the tools, some of you are already familiar with them. Just make it easier for you to interact with the data that we have basically served through the Africa GeoPortal. And beyond that, we have given users the ability to use notebooks, which is just on ArcGIS notebooks that has been built upon Jupyter notebooks. So from there, you're able to interact with large data sets, perform queries on them, do different kinds of analysis, then direct your results to different kinds of viewers. It could be dashboards within Africa GeoPortal, or you can take them externally to other systems and so on. And finally, on learning resources, still with Africa GeoPortal, because we understand that learning is a key element to the kind of experience you'll have with spatial data. We've made available a number of resources just to help you build capacity. So this is essential for most people who are trying to understand how do you access data within Africa GeoPortal, how are you able to visualize it, interact with it, and so on. Those are just some of the capabilities that we've provided. And still further to that, we have made it easier for you to take advantage of our learning hub that is with Esri, where you're able to access a number of courses that have been made available by our learning team or our training team, as well as other contributors, where we've been able to partner with other organizations based on the data sets that they have. And we are just providing access to these courses. So you could either choose an experience based on your level of comfort in terms of your skills when it comes to working with spatial data. This could be done also based on capabilities, just based on identified capabilities that we hope to enable with the data, as well as the tools that we have, as well as products. So some of the key products we have within our entire system, we've just tried to make it possible for you to access content based on that. And from there, you're just able to interact with the different kinds of courses that are available, and you can walk through the courses. It doesn't require much for you to do. You just need a login or you need a user account to be able to just do some of these courses. And also we've provided any other resources you may need. For example, if it's specialized software, we've also provided you an avenue to, an avenue for you to be able to download trial versions of this software. So all of this has been made available through Africa GeoPortal, where you can access this content from the Learning Hub, as well as other training sites that are under Esri. And finally, one of the key things that Matthew had mentioned is that we act as a portal of portals, whereby we have identified, or we are working with a number of countries, as well as agencies or development partners across the continent to be able to provide content that is just being tailored to specific regions or specific activities and so on. So some of the countries that we have currently onboarded and they've been able to create their different portals under Africa GeoPortal are listed below, but we are still also working with other agencies to be able to do that, or other countries. whereby for each country, we're identifying key organizations that have the mandate to disseminate this data, and they're able to lead efforts across their countries to be able to do this. And currently, we're also engaging a number of countries to be able to still create portals as well as continuously update the portals with relevant content. Other than that, we have a number of agencies, as I've mentioned, who are also providing this data. I'm sure you're familiar with a number of them that are listed here, who you can just interact with to be able to just get a sense of the kind of data they have available and how you can make use of it. So an example is Africa GeoPortal and the Africa GeoPortal, whereby they have their country site and they've made available their data sets for use within Africa GeoPortal. And just something that's running across the entire GeoPortal is that we have that standard template, which allows people to get a sense of the agencies behind the GeoPortal for the particular countries, trying to showcase the data as indicated here. And again, it's just the same way of interacting with the data and obviously redirecting you to resources that can help you interact with this data. Further to that, still within Africa GeoPortal, someone will be able to just access the data, whereby they can search for a particular data set, they're able to visualize it just to get a sense of what the data set is about. So they can get an overview of the data, go to the table itself just to explore the attribute information, and be able to access the API just to be able to use it in other applications, or even just identify the data. And beyond that, just to make it easier for people to use it, from the exploratory section of the data set to be identified as something that you can do. It's something that you can use our mapping.
Pauline, just to interrupt you there, I think we've lost your audio quite badly. I'm not sure if it's just myself, but we lost your mic a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Very faintly.
Is this better?
Much better, yeah. Thanks, Pauline.
Okay, sorry about that. So I just take it back to this section where I was saying that we have countries that we are collaborating with through different agencies that have the mandate to disseminate this data, where we work with them to identify relevant data sets for the particular countries to make them available to different users. And also we've worked with a number of agencies to also provide this data based on different development efforts being made across the continent. So an example that I'd given was Ethiopia GeoPortal, where, as I indicated, we are just using the same kind of standard format across the different geoportals to give the users an understanding of what the data set available there is about and who are the collaborating partners in the different countries, an ability for people to explore the data, just to be able to interact with it, either viewing it through the map or just going to the item details to get the metadata for these different data sets. And finally, redirecting you to the different resources that you can take advantage of to make use of this data. Beyond that, I was just able to indicate that you can search for data. And from there, you can search for specific data sets. And an example that I'd opened was like for the regions level for Ethiopia, where someone is able to just have an overview of the data set, explore the attribute information of the data, then identify ways in which the site will be able to export the data if this is something relevant to them. They're also able to just embed this data into other applications. And something that will make it easier for our users on Africa GeoPortal is to just directly transfer this data onto the mapping tools that we had previously mentioned. So from that point, users are able to just open a web map or to just load the data inside a map viewer. And within the map viewer, some of the key capabilities we have for this are just on smart mapping capabilities, whereby our particular system is intelligent enough to assess the data type that is available there for the different attributes, then quickly display this information based on that. So like for here, it's automatically just picking the region name and trying to display this information based on the different regions we have across Ethiopia. But I'm also able to use other different kinds of attributes to display this information. So once a user is within Africa GeoPortal, as I mentioned, one of the things that we enable people to do is to add their own data sets, search for other data sets shared on country portals, as well as access other data sets within the Access Online broader community of data. So for example, if I have my own data sets, which are just going to open here. For example, I have a data set specific on river gauges for a particular place where I have the code information, maintenance date, and other attribute information that I can use to just visualize this data. So that particular data set is in CSV format. And one of the things that I'm able to do is just to be able to drag and drop this information. And again, the capabilities that I'd mentioned in terms of smart mapping just allow me to quickly visualize this based on different attributes. So for example, if I just want to look at based on the river gauges or the stream gauges based on the organizations that manage them, I'm able to visualize this information based on that. If I just want to look based on the different codes, unique codes for the gauges, I'm also able to do that, to visualize this information based on that. Also, other than adding my own data sets, I'm able to search for data. So I could search for data within Access Online broadly, within Living Atlas, which is just basically curated content from authoritative contributors globally, one of them being curated content by Esri. So I'm able to add data from that. I'm able to add data from other users within Africa GeoPortal, other groups that I'm party to, some of the favorite or my most preferred data sets, as well as my own data that I may have uploaded previously. So for example, I could just search for Kenyan hospitals. And if I do that within Access Online, I can see a data set that has been shared by someone who is familiar to a number of us. And if I just look at this data set, the metadata to get an understanding of when the data was published, a description of this data just to get to know what to get from the data. How many people have been able to access it, just to establish if it's something that they use and so on. And I'm also able to just, again, search for data from other sources. Like, for example, I can use something that's a bit customized just to identify data and a person who has, the person who has published the data to access the data. So for example, if looking at a I'm able to view this information. Again, add the data set. I can explore it, any other data set in case I want to add it, and so on. So within my map viewer, as I said, basically, it allows us to visualize data, but it also allows us to do other things to the data. So one of these things is performing analysis on the data sets that we have. And the capabilities still embedded within Africa GeoPortal allow us to access our own data or data that has been published by other people, as well as other services that have been made available by Esri. So an example is elevation services that have been made available by Esri, which just allow us to take advantage of content that is already available, meaning that I may not need, again, to start trying to collect this data, doing analysis or doing my preparation, then coming to do the analysis later on. I can basically leverage some of these capabilities that Esri is making available. So if we come to analysis, we're just able to get an understanding of some of the analysis you can do online, whereby if you have your different data sets, you can just put in the specific parameters and you're able to do analysis and so on. And just to make it easier for people to get an understanding of the kind of analysis you can do, we've just provided that information just to help you understand if you run a particular tool, what kind of result you might get from particular information, or once you put in your data, what kind of result you expect to get from the data. So an example of this, or the scenario we'd like to look at, is we have cases of flooding that have been taking place in different parts of the continent. Specifically, in this case, we look at a region in Kenya that is very susceptible to flooding almost annually. So for example, if I have the stream gauge location for that particular area, I can be able to determine, for instance, if from this point there's flooding, what will be the downstream effect of that particular activity or flooding and so on. So to be able to do that, I can run one of the tools you have available. For example, I can create a watershed to understand the extent to which you could expect flooding to take place. Or I could just do a simple downstream to just understand if we're looking at the effects of flooding around a particular place, what kind of effect do we expect across or downstream from that particular place. So once that is done, an example for that result would be this particular downstream indication, just showing us that from this particular place, if we expect for any effect to take place, then it will go to this particular direction. So just looking at some of the data sets that I had indicated earlier, like for the health facilities in Kenya, I may want to see if there's flooding on this particular place, which facilities will be available to be able to provide support or to provide flood response activities based on the kind of effect we're anticipating within this particular place. So before I'd explore the health facilities in Kenya, and for example, if I was just to explore the data, I'd be able to see that we have a number of information such as facility type, location for these particular facilities, and so on. And I could just perform a simple filter where, for example, I'm just interested in facilities of a certain level that will be able to provide this kind of service. So if I just look at those facilities that are level 3 within this area, then I'm also still able to perform further analysis to be able to just identify if we have this number of facilities across this particular section of this area, what kind of service or how many areas, or what is the extent of relief response that they'll be able to provide. So to do this, again, I can use proximity analysis to do that. And if I just do the drive time analysis, I can just look at the health facilities that are available, just look at the rural driving distance, because this is a rural area, specify my extent and other parameters. And another thing I could do is just select the barrier layers. So by barrier layers, it means that if this river has flooded, then it will not be possible for this particular facility to provide response services across the river. So once I set my parameters, I'm just able to provide the name for my layer, where I'd like for this to be saved, and so on. Then I can run the analysis for this. And if I run the analysis, the kind of result I anticipate to get is this, whereby for each particular facility within this area, I'd be able to determine the kind of, the extent to which they'll be able to provide response services. So for example, you can see if I select for this particular area, which will be for the Masalani Health Center, you can see that the boundary itself is on at this particular, just coming to where the flooding we expect to take place, the extent of the flooding to take place. So that's just some of the analysis you can perform. And once you do the analysis, you may want to share your analysis results, whereby you can save this particular web map, and then you can finally share it with different users to be able to interact with it. So this could be to different groups within Africa GeoPortal. Perhaps you have a user community there, or it could be to publicly to other people to just be able to make use of it, and so on. So still within Africa GeoPortal, as I said, we are providing a number of ways for you to interact with data and so on. And to do that, basically, we've just made available these tools that you can take advantage of. So if you're looking at working with field data and so on, we have a number of applications that support that, such as the field maps application, which is relatively new, that allows you to just combine a number of field functionalities or workflows into one application. We have something on collecting survey data or collecting information from different people in a form, as well as quick capture, which can allow you to just rapidly collect data and so on. And we also have other applications that you could take advantage of just to be able to provide a better user experience for some of the different users you have who would like to make use of the data you have. So I think at this point, Victor should be having a poll question. And I'm seeing like a number of messages on chat, so probably we can try to address some of that before we move to the next section.
Oh yes, Pauline, there's a poll on whether attendees are aware of the Esri data collection apps or field apps, what you call the field maps right now, as you mentioned. Are you aware? Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, I guess we can end it there. And let's see how many are aware of this data collection apps by Esri. There you have it. At least 70% in attendance know about or are aware of the existence of the Esri data collection app or field apps, as you have shown. So thank you for taking part. Pauline, you can proceed with the rest.
Thanks, Victor. So as I indicated, to be able to access some of these applications, you can just come to this menu section and select the kind of application you'd like to make use of. So just still looking at the case of the flooding in Tana River, you may find that there are a lot of collaborative response efforts around this. So once someone has been able to identify, for example, some of the facilities that they'll be able to provide response support services to the people around Tana River, the next question will be for the people providing this kind of service, like the National Disaster Management Organization, just for them to assess and see if the facilities that have been identified are actually well equipped to provide this service. To do that, basically, they can leverage one of these applications, like the Field Maps application, to just be able to allow people in the field to go and do the inspection of the facilities. So once you click on Field Maps, you're able to launch this particular application, and from there, you can go through a sequence of steps to be able to create a map that will be suitable for use within the Field Maps application. So once you've identified the map you'd like to use, you can basically just come to configure it. And from the configuration part, you'll be able to set a number of things. But before you do that, you need to prepare the layer that you have, as well as the map itself, to be able to perform this kind of, or to be able to support this kind of workflow within the field. So the first thing when it comes to the data you have, if you come to the particular layer and you come to the data tab, you can see the kind of data that may already be there. And if you want someone to just be able to update some of this information, you can make it easier for them to do this through this particular section. So if you come to the fields, for example, you can make some changes to the display name for the particular field to make it easier for people to just identify this kind of information. You can try to change other kinds of information and so on, again, to make it easier for people to interact with this particular field when they'll be collecting data in the field. So for example, if I come to the facility name, One of the things we have available is a list of values, whereby you can generate a list or a domain that people can basically use to just be able to update this information easily, like from a drop down. So you can use the list that's available, or you can basically just add another facility, because you don't want people to enter incorrect information or just limit the number of errors that can be captured from the field. And from that point, you can add another facility. For example, if there's an additional facility that's to be inspected, you can basically just add that information from there. So other than that, once you've been able to just make changes to the particular layer, you can also just come to add the layer to a map. And after that, you can make changes or settings to the data or to the layer itself as it's going to be displayed. So one of the common things that people can do at this point is just change the display. For example, if you want this to be categorized based on different regions, it could be based on administrative boundaries, like you'd want for someone to just inspect facilities within a particular boundary or within a particular constituency or location. You can change that kind of visualization just to make it easier for someone to identify this information based on that. So those are just some of the things you can do before you come to the field map itself to make the updates. So once you come to field maps and you've added the particular map, you can come to the content itself. But before that, you'll actually get an overview of the particular field, for the particular web map you'd like to use. Then you can come to content, and from content, you can look at the template for your particular, for your specific layer that you'd like to make updates to it. You can change the display name. So for example, maybe we can call it hospital or facility. So you are able to do this easily from this particular interface. You're also able to just change the default values that would be automatically displayed on that particular application when people are using it in the field, and so on. So the other thing you can do is come to the form section. And for this section, you're basically just trying to identify the questions or the fields that you'd like for the users to be able to populate in the field. So in this section, you can easily just drag and drop the different fields that you'd like to be populated by the people who will be doing the inspections of the facilities. So just for me to be able to do that, I'm simply dragging and dropping the different fields I'd like to be populated. And from there, I can just make updates, such as putting in a facility name and just putting in a hint for someone. And just doing all those kinds of updates to make it easier for someone to interact with this particular map once they'll be in the field and they're using the field maps application. Once that is done, I can simply just save my particular, I can save my map after I've made the settings. I can come to, let me just start those changes. I can just come to the offline section to see if I'd like to enable this for offline use, because in cases where connectivity is not sustainable, so I can just decide if I'll enable this for offline use. And from that point, I can specify the map area, which will be downloaded automatically if someone is trying to use this within the field. I can look at other settings such as accuracy for how the data is being collected, streaming if I'm working with linear features or polygon features beyond point features and so on. Then I can come to sharing to identify how I'd like for this particular map to be accessed. Do I want it to be to specific people within Africa GeoPortal? For example, my user community. Do I want it accessible to the public? Or do I want it accessible to the entire of Africa GeoPortal? So these are just some of the settings I'll be able to do for this specific application. I'll just switch my view here a bit to a mobile interface. And if I come to the field maps application, again, I'm able to open my map, and some of the settings that I've been able to set up, you'll see it's being made available on that particular web map that I've opened. So for example, if I'm doing field inspections and I'm looking at this particular facility, I'm able to just verify the name. So at this point, I can verify the name, and you remember, based on the domains that had been set in terms of making it easier for people to input information with as limited errors as possible, you can see I'm getting the options for the different facilities. I can put in the number of beds for that particular facility, medical staff, as well as storage facilities. So I can just select one of this information, put in the other information just quickly. And once that is done, I can just submit this information. So once the submission has been done, it can be made available on other viewers that we have on Africa GeoPortal, for example. We have dashboards, we have web app builders, and so on, to just be able to interact with this information. So beyond that, again, just looking at some of the things we have available for people to take advantage of within Africa GeoPortal. We also have field data collection applications that just allow us to also collect different information to support other functions. So an example is if you're still looking at the flooding situation in Tana River, and probably there are people who will be requesting for support from these facilities that have been identified. So if it's humanitarian organizations collaborating and so on, they can simply just take advantage of other applications to be able to request for services and so on. So an example of this is using Survey 123. Again, I believe Esri Eastern Africa has had a number of sessions around this. And from this particular form, they're able to just, someone is able to identify a facility that is closest to them, verify just the location, and capture some information and so on, which will be relevant to requesting for services from some of these facilities for this to be taken again to people who may not be able to access the facilities and so on. So this form, basically, again, it's very easy to just configure it. You can simply drag and drop different kinds of questions in there, put in information and so on. And once that is done, you can save and publish this form and so on. But beyond that, again, we have tools that are making it easier for people to interact with this kind of information and so on. And an example of this is Experience Builder, which is an application basically that makes it easier for people to just have a better user experience with the applications we have. Whereby, for instance, instead of navigating through a number of apps, you're trying to make it easier for you to have one interface to access these applications and make use of them and so on. So the good thing about Experience Builder is that it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of identifying the best kind of interface you'd like to have for your different applications, or how the users would like to interact with them. Allows you to integrate different features, for example, 2D and 3D visualizations within a specific app. You're able to do that with Experience Builder. We are trying to give people a more easy way of building applications. So the interface is quite modern, and you're able to just easily drag and drop the different kinds of widgets or features you'd like to have in your application. It's a mobile first design in the sense that we can easily and quickly just have everything overlaid properly for a mobile kind of device. And obviously, like every other application, it's customizable in the sense that you can apply your own kinds of code to be able to further customize it. So with Experience Builder, someone is able to just create a new experience, and we've just made this, again, simpler for people to build the experience or build the applications based on a number of templates. And the good thing is that with the different templates, you keep on updating them and adding new templates based on some of the preferences that we or some of the feedback we get from a number of our users. So if you're looking at this case of someone who may be trying to get or to request for response services. I have already an experience that's available, and I've already added my map in here, which was the web map of the of the different humanitarian or response facilities that we previously identified. So to do this still within Experience Builder, just to make it easier for someone to use this survey as well as this interface at the same time, I can easily just use the widgets I have here on my left, and I can drag and drop my particular widget. And in this case, I just want to add a survey form that will be adjacent to this map, so that as I can see the map and I can identify where I am in the map and be able to enter the form based on this. So again, I can create a new survey, or I can select an existing survey. And in this case, I just use my Tana River survey form. And once that is done, I'm able to just tweak the appearance. For example, I can say I want to enable the survey theme. And then the additional thing is I can send data to this survey. So that means that from this map, I'd like to send some information to the survey so that I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to update information and so on. So I can just select the map, select the kind of layer I'd like to be updated, or the information that I'd like to be updated, then I can add the connection. So in this case, I'm just saying that for facility name, I'd like this to be directed to the facility name question. So facility name on the field or on the attribute information for the facilities is being directed to the facility name here. And another thing I could also do, for example, is I could have my location again being directed to the verify location question. So once that is done, I can just save this. And it's also possible to look at this based on different interfaces. And I can just preview this information based on the changes I've made. And for example, if I was using this particular map or this interface, and if I use my current location here, assuming it landed here. So if I click on this map, or if I click on this feature, sorry, let me just try that again. Let me just try to publish that. Add that connection again. So I want facility name to be directed to facility name question. Let me save that. Let me preview that. Yes, so if I just switch to live view, I don't know, it's not being picked on the other section. You can see that the information is just being automatically taken to the facility name over here for this particular field. And I can enter the information, enter the date, and finally just do the submission for the form. So these are just some of the applications you can take advantage of within Africa GeoPortal, which make it easier for people to coordinate activities. As we anticipate, we have a number of communities within Africa GeoPortal that are just making use of this platform to do a lot of collaboration or to support a number of activities across the continent. And with that, I think I'll direct it back to Matthew, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Pauline. I guess thank you for running through what is just a few of the capabilities that you can achieve on Africa GeoPortal. For those that know the Esri technology, Africa GeoPortal is built using ArcGIS Hub, and the tools and services you've seen there are based on our ArcGIS Online and our field data collection tools as well. So you have access to these data, these tools, and a lot of the analysis, spatial analysis tools as well. So we've covered a lot in the hour, but it's only scratching the surface of what's possible. So I just want to leave, really, before we move into questions, a challenge for you all. How will you use it? We want to challenge you to use